Hi, I'm Rory Greeno with XR Today, and welcome to the November edition of the Big XR News Show. I am once again joined by our season regulars Kevin O'Donovan and Jennifer Rogers. Thank you both so much for joining me today. As always, appreciate your time and knowledge, and I hope you're doing well.
All good, Rory. I'm back in home office after a couple of weeks of travel, so all good, all set.
Fantastic, fantastic. So why don't we kick this off? The big sort of topic for today is events and really shedding light on trending events, but then maybe also some overlooked events in terms of the XR industry. You got big name events happening left and right every month, but within that, there's also very much industry and enterprise focused events that are showing trending technologies, topics, and all of that good stuff, which perhaps don't get the eye. Jennifer, I know you're very much involved with enterprise XR simulation technology to such a deep level in terms of the enterprise sector. I wanted you to give us a little bit of a insight into some of the events that you've joined recently, perhaps in the past 6 months, any coming up towards the end of this year as well, where you're seeing some trending information, trending technology in terms of XR. What's been your recent experiences and what can you share with our readers?
Yeah, so I think there have been a lot of events that are going on, whether they're industry specific or more general. If we're thinking about some of the events that maybe not all of our colleagues end up attending, but have amazing pieces of information, I can reflect upon the last few months. Um, we've certainly had a few events here in Houston focused in the energy space, particularly a few events around digital technology and the use of not only XR but also AI and digital twins in the energy space. Those have been very well attended and quite a few great conversations coming out of those around not only the opportunities that exist but also the challenges within the ecosystem in terms of working together and solving for all kinds of tricky things, whether that be the sharing of data or whether that be dealing with bandwidth issues and all of the things that we tend to see in the energy space. I'm sure Kevin will have some commentary around that as well. But I'd be remiss if I didn't also bring up another event that was an inaugural event hosted by the IEEE Metaverse group this year that just took place in Seattle. It was tied into an event that's happened for a while. That event is ISMAR. So it is the International Symposium on Mixed and Augmented Reality. That just took place in Seattle just a few weeks ago in October. Really interesting event. I would say lots of amazing research coming to the surface in terms of what people are working on from a spatial computing perspective, from a hardware perspective, a lot around the ways in which those work together and some semblances of people starting to talk about simulation in an AI world and how all of that comes together as well. So really great event and pleased to see the turnout around that particular piece. I think that leads us well into another event that's coming up that people may or may not know about. Certainly not an IEEE event, but an event that a lot of our colleagues typically attend that's coming up the first week of December in Orlando, Florida. And that one is ITSEC, which is I/ITSEC. That's a really interesting event because it's a great event that's gone on for quite some time and is really a great collaboration between the defense community and heavy industrial. Obviously, we have a lot of opportunity to work together around some of those pieces. And so that's a great event that's usually very well attended. Once again, primarily from people that are working in the heavy industrial and or defense spaces and are wanting to collaborate around how we use technology in service of humanity and align to specific business cases, all those things that we keep talking about and harping about in all of these conversations. So that's one that I'm definitely looking forward to that's coming up here in a couple of weeks. Additionally, there are events as we get into the first quarter of next year. I know Kevin and I were just talking about Industrial Immersive, which will also happen in Houston. It looks like we're both going to be there and maybe even be speaking together, so that'll be fun. Once again, focusing on those heavy industrial use cases and the ways in which we can utilize extended reality in ways that are solving problems for the business. So all great events, and maybe not those bigger shows that you were referring to, Rory, but certainly great events where there are amazingly talented people coming together trying to solve real challenges in the perspective of heavy industrial.
Fantastic, Kevin. It'd be great to hear some of your perspective on perhaps overlooked but then also focused events that you've noticed recently or upcoming.
Well, as Jennifer says, we have the overarching massive tech events, right? You have CES, you have Mobile World Congress, you'll have NVIDIA GTC, you'll have Microsoft Ignite. To pick a country, pick a Viva Tech in France and whatever. So you have these kind of overarching events, and we all kind of look at those and look at all the cool stuff. And then as you get into each industry, and particularly I spend a lot of time in, let's say, energy and then in manufacturing. So you have things like Distributech that's coming up in the March in Dallas. You have European Inlet Europe, you have Adipec, Gas Tech, whatever. So pick any medical industry, they have their devices. Education has theirs and whatever. And I think where we're kind of, I think we're all still kind of, the general public is waiting for, last year it was the Apple's Vision Pro was going to be the answer for everything. And it wasn't, right? Now it's a great piece of tech, but it wasn't. And as you go into different industries, you find different software companies with different hardware solutions, headsets, VR, whatever. And they work for certain use cases in their industry. So we will find those. I was off at Adipec in Abu Dhabi a couple of weeks back, came across a bunch of companies with very good XR training platforms aimed at oil and gas. A lot of people there were using... They had the Quest 3 on the boots for display, but they were using Pico or HTC or Varo headsets for training guys on oil rigs, on tankers, on whatever. Now that's not a volume business for the general public, but it is very useful solutions for those industries. So I think what we're seeing is obviously there's different use cases, different industries, but we're finding they're niche solutions. And to that point, depending on your industry, you have niche solutions. My personal one would be, if you're looking at XR, augmented reality, probably AWE is probably the most comprehensive event for that world, right? If you're looking at digital twins, then you have digital twins in oil and gas, you have digital twins in medicine, and there's actual events called that. Where they get into the gory details there. So it's like anything. In different industries, there's a lot of different niches. Now, that doesn't mean that AR, XR, MR is going to break through to the general public in the morning, but it's creating value in those industries today. So a lot of it is very niche. But being used and growing, because the underlying lack of workers, pace of change isn't going away. So that's all staying.
Fantastic. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but it'd be great to learn, what is the value to this for people perhaps outside of those targeted sectors? What does what does that growing AR, XR, MR, VR, etc., that growing presence within these targeted enterprise events, whether it be healthcare, oil and gas, heavy industry, what can a more general observer of the XR industry, what can they take away from that presence, and how does that really reflect on the general adoption of XR across the board if these companies are putting, or if these sectors, are putting so much investment and so much capital towards these technologies?
So my personal opinion is that what I see happening out there is that, if we were having this discussion 2 or 3 years ago, people were doing the same. They had niche solutions, but they were very much one-off packaged silo apps. Somebody went out with a camera, they did a reality capture, they created a digital twin, they created some training, they rolled it out. It was 6 months after they started, they rolled it out. And by the time they rolled it out, normally it was out of date because everything had changed. What I'm seeing now is a lot more companies, especially in oil and gas, in manufacturing, there's this kind of foundational thing going on and saying, hang on a second now, we need to get all our data in one place, one digital twin, let's call it. And we don't need that just for MR and XR and training. We need it for our AI, for training our AI. So they're being forced to get all of their data. And that's hard, right? We've been trying this for years. Different data schemas, different silos of data, breaking it down, whatever, and having a real-time view. So I think there's an awful lot of what I call plumbing going on underneath. And whether that plumbing is being done on AWS or Azure, and then on top of that, you have NVIDIA Omniverse, or you have Viru from Virtualware, or Unity, and what do you call it? What's the one? Epic engine, real engine. So there's a lot more people, instead of going off and designing everything themselves, they're starting to use WebXR, or they're using those kind of foundational products to build specific use cases rather than building the entire stack. And I think that can only help the wider adoption later, because everybody building everything from scratch, that was just killing us, right? Because then we were getting nowhere in a hurry. Same with headsets. No one's building apps for specific headsets. They're building them for all headsets. So again, that kind of common standards, I think, that's a good thing. Now, it's still a slow burn, right? And but I suppose the ROI, if I'm training people to go on an offshore oil rig, the ROI of me doing that is very different from Amazon training guys to go out in a truck to deliver the last mile. Completely different use cases, completely different ROI, completely different cost.
Yeah. I mean, just to kind of add to that, I think I'm encouraged in the sense that, as Kevin was speaking about, as we start to look at some of these more niche use cases and things like that, one of the things that we are seeing is a direct connection between, as I talk about every time we have this show, right, the technology in the use of advancing humanity, right? In every case, we're looking at real world challenges that exist in the industry and the ways in which we can explore those or approach those in fundamentally different ways. And by the way, in ways that benefit not only the organization from an enterprise perspective, but from a career development perspective of the people who actually engage in the experiences. And so I think one of the things that's really encouraging is that as we start to really nail these, and fundamentally transform what work looks like, and the success of these various workplaces, the more we actually build a case whereby executives can look at XR and understand the value of the investment, and really get beyond kind of the area we've been stuck in for some time, where it feels like everything is a pilot. And I know we've talked about that before, but if you're looking at this and really investing large scale from an organizational standpoint, it's important to actually see proof that it actually solves business problems. And to Kevin's point that he was making before, also just an understanding that we have to go beyond, did you like the experience? Did you think it was cool? Right? I mean, there may be some industries where that is the business case, but certainly when we look at heavy industrial and some of the others, I think the reason that a lot of us are very interested in that space is because there's a clear connection between operations and even the way that work is planned and managed and executed within those organizations that ties directly to the XR space, which I think is really exciting. And the other thing that I think is encouraging is we're starting to see more and more of XR not just being its own event, which I think is lovely and wonderful. And it's great to see all of you wonderful people at these events, but also in events that are maybe a little bit broader. So one of the ones I didn't mention before but I think is also exciting coming up in February is Oil and Gas Automation and Technology Week, right? Not specifically around XR, but lots of people who are engaged in XR in some facet of what they're doing around automation and technology in the oil and gas space, for example, who will be there. And I think that's encouraging to me too, because as we're starting to talk about the ways in which these industries are looking towards the future and the ways in which they will automate and or utilize data and all of those wonderful things, XR is coming into that conversation naturally, which I once again think is also of a lot of help to all of us that have been in this space for a while, because we're starting to see it find a home And for it to just be something that comes up every time you talk about digital transformation or any time you talk about automation, which I think is really exciting to see as well.
And I think just to follow on from those pieces about the event, we're also going to be talking about smart glasses, which is one of the sort of biggest trending topics of 2024 in terms of XR, and we've discussed it at length during these years, or during these past 12 months of interviews in 2024. But one of the interesting points I've noticed from these smart glasses pieces, whether it be the Amazon deliverables that Kevin, you mentioned just now, OpenAI moving towards smart glasses, Apple, or potentially moving towards smart glasses, Apple doing their internal research and taking on some of Meta's smart glasses team. And even more recently, across the weekend, you had Samsung mention smart glasses in their Q3 earnings, and Meta's Project Araya also being leveraged by multiple international universities for automation, simulation, robotics research. I think one of the interesting points within all of these is it's coming from a use case first perspective for many of them, whether it be entertainment or then more enterprise focused stuff too. I guess my follow-on question with that context at hand is, at these events, are you seeing smart glasses particularly have a prominent role or prominently featured within these spaces, or is it perhaps more of a focus then on the AR software rather than that hardware? What's smart glasses looking like from a practical enterprise use point of view, rather than just perhaps headline hype?
So, so at the last couple of events I've been at, in probably second half of the year, AI has sucked the air out of everything, right? If you don't have AI written on the wall, everyone kind of goes, you've missed the bus. And obviously AI means many things to many people and whatever, right? So the marketing has gone nuts on AI stickers on everything. So at ADIPEC, the big oil and gas one in whatever, now this is 2,300 exhibitors, about 200,000 people, right? This is massive, biggest oil energy event on the planet. I probably came across 40, 50 demos with VR. I probably came across 5 or 6 with AR glasses. Yeah. I was at Web Summit last week. Now, granted, Web Summit's all about startups, whatever, 2,000 of them. Came across a couple with smart glasses. Again, AI was dominant, for want of a better word. I think where I think it's interesting is there's a lot of research and development being done on the technology going into the glasses. So the lenses, the displays, I think sound and voice commands are probably going to take over first, because it is very difficult to get all the technology into a tiny headset to give you a Vision Pro or a Quest 3 mixed reality experience, right? There's a reason those things are so big. There's so much hardware plugged into them. Maybe if you plug it, if it's tethered to your phone, but it's still, even the graphics, the diodes for creating the whatever. So I think a lot of people are looking at it and going, hang on a second now. The Vision Pro experience, not perfect, but that's pretty cool. But look at the hardware I need to run that. So the laws of physics can't make that smaller yet, right? The industry might. Maybe I can tether it. The other thing I think is fascinating is if you look at all the AI stuff that's happening. For AI, proper AI, you need the NPU, the neural processing unit in the chip. Now, obviously, NVIDIA have them, Qualcomm have them, Intel have them, yada, yada, yada. They all have them. But they're bigger chips. And again, it's hard to put them into a headset, right? And I think until that starts coming down, smaller and smaller and smaller, and then when you talk to the AI, it's local language. Not everything's going to the cloud, especially in enterprise, right? You do not want everything going off up to the big cloud in the sky for all sorts of reasons. So I think people are kind of looking at it and going, there's not going to be no breakthrough, I think, in the next 12 months. But for niche use cases, there's devices there already. This will work. That's fine. But I think, OpenAI, Apple, I really do think that whether it's the headset or whatever, they're looking for the next device.
Right.
What's the next device everybody on the planet will be carrying around, or is this something you wear? So I think that's where it's headed. I think sound and voice control will come first, RealWare, we're at ADIPEC with the Energy AI, which is the big announcement from ADNOC and the UAE government on AI for energy. But I think we're the AI will probably still suck the air out in 2025, and what do you call it? Maybe in 4 or 5 years' time, when we get this level of compute power in a tiny thing that goes in a headset, then we'll start to see some XR for the masses. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I just kind of bouncing off of what Kevin said. I think many of us that have worked with industrial applications of smart glasses, not consumer applications, but industrial applications for some time, have all struggled with this for quite some time, right? It started out with the battery power just being wholly inadequate to actually wear the things on the job. They were too heavy. You had to charge them all the time. We've gotten to the place in which some of those things have been solved. But to Kevin's point, people are still having to tether, really because of the limitations of what we can get in something that people can wear. If it's glasses, if that's the form factor we're talking about, right, within the workplace, and doesn't detract from the work that they're doing. And I'm pleased that Kevin mentioned RealWare. I bring this up in lots of other conversations that we've had, but when you work in uncontrolled environments that are outside, where we have explosives, where things have to be zone rated, it really matters what device you have. RealWare is one of the only ones that's been in the space for any considerable period of time that can handle those types of environments. And so, I think as people are starting to move beyond the pilot that we were talking about before, it's important to look at what devices work for different applications. I think people are still in the process of doing that. I know Kevin and I had a conversation in Houston a few months back at Gas Tech, where we were kind of lamenting about the fact that a lot of the senior leaders who may be able to make decisions in some of these organizations aren't even aware of the different nuances in XR and the different types of devices that they might need in different types of environments and for different purposes. So I think we've still got a fair amount of work to do there. But that said, I think we all agree that meeting people where they're at on the job and providing them real-time support that's either over the shoulder in terms of what they're doing, or even feeding them real-time information or data to help them do their jobs better, gets us in a fundamentally different place than just your standard VR simulated experience. So I think I talked about automation and technology in general before, as we start to get to that approach where it's kind of how do we use the right devices to automate work, to augment work and human workers and all of those pieces, the conversation continues to mature. That said, there's still quite a bit of work to do before we have the right form factor that just comes alongside you in whatever you're doing from a work perspective, doesn't restrict your field of vision, can be used in some of those harsher environments at scale and over time without investing in new devices over and over again. That's kind of the piece that we're at. It's going to continue to mature. I agree with Kevin. When you look at the chipsets and what's happening right now and what people are building, will probably be there sooner rather than later. It's just where we find ourselves in this moment in time right now, where we kind of encouragingly know what we want to do with the application, the use case, and are just kind of waiting for the tech to get to a place in which it actually meets us exactly where we want to be.
Fantastic. Please go ahead.
Rory, if I may add, one of the things, again, I saw it at the events recently, people that don't live in this world, right, that haven't been geeks like us for the last 10 years on this stuff.
Yeah.
So they see the promise. And a lot of the business guys and girls that I would be speaking to, they're going, hey, look, we just can't get the skilled workers, right? We got to train them faster and bring them up to speed and make them competent. And there's no accidents and. So this whole VR, AR, whatever the hell it is, that sounds promising. But they kind of go, but the amount of infrastructure I need to put in, because I know we did it 5 years ago and it was like a real pain because we had to go out and scan the site and And now what's happening is that they're going to scan the site anyway because they need a digital twin just for their operations.
Right.
Whereas before, if you wanted a VR AR training module, you had to go out and scan. So how do we do that? That's all new. Oh, we need to bring in the IoT data. Oh, we haven't done that yet. That's all new. They're doing all of this anyway. They have to. And with the rise of AI, and they all want to train their AI models, whether it's the big large language model in the cloud or in their own prem or small language model on an edge device, they have to do this anyway. And the lack of skilled workers is not going away. So if those two things happen, regardless of what goes on in the AR, XR, spatial computing world, that has to happen. And by the time all that kind of stuff starts coming together much better, and standards and probably just say that you can move CAD models around and digital twin models around, and then I think a lot of the hardware will become much more less frictionless. But as I say, there are plenty headsets out there today, AR, VR, mixed reality, that do a brilliant job for certain use cases. Now, some people say, oh, it's too big and it's tethered to a PC. But if I'm doing fighter simulation training, that's fine. I'm going to be wearing a helmet anyway. So again, it's not that it's for the masses. But I do think what OpenAI, Meta, and what they're doing, to bring this to the masses, that's going to continue as well at pace. And I think whoever cracks that, that's the next smartphone market, right? So no wonder they're chasing after it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting even to see from an IEEE perspective, to Kevin's point, not only are we working on standards, as we've talked about, so that, we can advance the space forward. I don't know if you guys saw recently, but on the data port functionality that IEEE offers its members now, where you can access research that people are doing all over the world around different aspects, there's now a huge spatial computing part of that data port, right? Where hopefully everyone that's working on all of these complex things can share all of that information, and we can continue to advance the space forward. And so those are the things that I think are really exciting. Obviously, standards are really important. Standards are informed by work that's being done, hopefully, out there in the research and R&D communities. And so I think all of those steps being put together put us in a better perspective, better light. We have a better community, I think, than we have up until this moment, where people are really starting to say, oh, I'm working on that. You're working on that too. Let's take the aspects of what we're doing around that and together advance forward in a way in which hopefully we make it to market in a faster and more efficient way that's more embraced by industry.
Fantastic. I think one of the sort of key points there between what you both said is really those many points that you mentioned are the integral pieces to help those decision makers understand what you said, Jennifer, what those niche individual parts of XR, AR, VR, MR, and how it applies to businesses. Those seem to be fundamental points to help understand that journey and where this technology is applicable. However, we got a slightly shorter episode today because I realised we're all quite busy. We've got a lot going on, so we need to crack on with our busy XR worlds. So I appreciate both of your time massively today. That was some really insightful pieces, not just insightful in terms of events, but as we just said, how that can apply to businesses in their XR journey today and make all of that a little bit more easy to understand, a bit more accessible, etc. So Kevin, Jennifer, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate your insight. And until the next time in December, we'll be doing this once again for a big year wrap up. Thank you both so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rory. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Rory.